Welcome, listeners, to number 219.
With Lisa, Phil, and Aaron from California. Boy, his arms must be tired.
Watch out for that low hanging overhang, Aaron. You might fly right into that if you're not careful. But
That's
we
my
have,
cat in the hat but you get it from the backside.
yeah, there's it looks like there's some kind of psalm or something like that on the back of it.
Yeah,
But
Probably the text of Cat in the Hat.
I was in the middle of work and really didn't know we had a weeknight pod this week, so I'm just jumping
Surprise.
right in here.
What? You don't look at the calendar either? Poor Philip.
Well, I,
well, why
I
don't you
actually
duck your
look. I usually look at Saturday and Sunday. We hadn't had one during the week in so long. I stopped.
right?
Right. I gave him permission to add one, either Tuesday or Friday.
Mhm.
But I think he needs to check and see if you're available.
Well, I knew that there might
He
be a
sent
little
the
bit of a
invitation.
delay.
I noticed. I don't think I
Oh, okay.
responded. I didn't notice that
Ah,
it came,
Yeah.
but
okay.
But in any event, we
Well,
have our returning
but
friend,
glad you're
Eric
here.
Sonnenschein.
That we have joined the antisocial network.
Yeah. Mask up, stay 6 feet apart.
Yeah, right.
I wish I'd finished the book.
Hello, hi.
If I'd have known, I'd have read faster.
That's
I'm on,
Yeah.
I
a,
just started one about handwriting, the lost art of handwriting.
that's the great thing about essays that you
I
can
love that
come
one.
up when in whatever order you want, read as many as
Yeah,
you want, and you're always going to get something out of it. It's not in that sense. It's I think superior to the narrative because the narrative you really do have to get the beginning, the middle, and the end to be able to really
true. Yeah.
understand it.
Right, right.
Right.
I feel like there's
Uh,
less short form these days.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this book, Eric.
Thanks a lot,
We
Phil.
did read Rock and Roll. I enjoyed
Mhm.
that also, and that was, like you said, it was
Yeah.
a narrative about loosely. It was a fictional kind of depiction of being a rock star in the 70s and 80s, right?
Or what we
Um,
call a rock star monkey, a would be, or some, kind of like.
Someone who wanted to be in the business.
yeah, or yeah,
Yeah,
a real
rock.
rocker,
Yeah,
grassroots
rocker.
rocker,
That's a more,
right?
'cause man, some of your listeners and viewers may be very literal and start looking me up in in that regard.
Well, they can look up that episode because that was a good one. I thought, we went over a lot of
All
ground
of
on
your
that one.
episodes are good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
thanks. Yeah, but this book, I really didn't know what to expect. I don't do as much reading as I would like, but I picked it up and I
Life gets
really
in the way.
I went right through it just like butter. To the point where sometimes the essays started running together for me. I was like, okay,
You
which
didn't stop. There weren't, the chapter was, you kind of didn't think of it as a chapter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, but I kind of before the episode today, I kind of went through and made some notes so I could have some order to it. I thought maybe we would first of all have you tell us a little bit about the book and how you gone about doing essays in addition to these novels.
Thank you very much. I'm so glad to be back with you. I really enjoyed not only doing the last our last episode together, but also watching it. I thought it was excellent, I'm sure it'll be really a lot of fun talking to you now. Um, I want to make a point of what you just said, and that is a wonderful tribute. That it was so easy to read. Somebody who read it and commented to me about it on social media said that it was like it was very easy to read and and deep ideas, which made me think of like a beach reading for the mind. And that's kind of I would love that to be the case.
I like that.
I'm on some social media discussion groups like Lacan Society, Jacques Lacan, the
Dr. Khan, I
post-structural
love her. A few for
psychoanalyst,
oh no, you're talking about something.
of Australia, and they come up with all of these, all of this really difficult language to understand, and all of these distinctions without a difference, and everybody has to be on the same in the same, esoteric groove. And I keep on saying, I like philosophy that I can understand it, somebody else can understand, because what's the point? I mean, if it's about life and the people that you want to read about it can't understand it, there's no point. But anyway, let me get to the question that you just asked, and which is how did I get into essays? What is the essay? Why the essay and not always fiction? Because there are a lot of fiction writers for whom, the essay is kind of like the last thing that you read, or it's the last thing they publish. Oh, here are a group of essays that this guy just collected from his number of articles in Esquire or whatever, and they throw them together. But for me, the essay means a lot more than that. First of all, um, I, for me, well, the essay is the most widely written paradigm that we have. Everybody has to write an essay. Kids in school have to write essays. When you take a test, a blue book test in college, you have to write an essay. Lawyers have to write essays. Law students have to write essays when they're explaining some cases. Journalists obviously are writing a form of essay. So everybody across the panoply of writers in our society has to write essays. And so, in a sense, it's a very common thing, just like poetry is a very common paradigm. So many people write poems of all kinds. And in fact, I make a point of that in one of my essays in this collection. So that's one thing, that the essay in one sense is as common as dirt. But for me, the essay has a special meaning because one of the first essayists who got me turned on to the essay was Michel de Montaigne. Michel de Montaigne was a writer that I read both in French classes, and then when I read him in English. He was not necessarily the inventor of the essay, but the popularizer of the essay. And his life was overlapping with Shakespeare's. And in fact, the first English translation of Montaigne was, I believe, it was 1593 by a gentleman named John Florio, which was a collection well, the fact that an English writer had translated Montaigne, a French writer, into English at the time of Shakespeare makes you realize that it was a kind of a novelty. It was exciting, it was interesting as literature. And Shakespeare might have had some familiarity with this, with the philosophy of Montaigne, which was skeptical, practical. He was somebody who definitely wanted to take his readings and make them accessible to a larger audience. Montaigne very famously, at a certain age, he had a horse, when he was 37, he had a horseback riding accident, which left him in a bad state, obviously. He was on the doorstep of death. Of course, this near-death experience had a radical impact on him. He then decided to renounce all of his public works. He was a magistrate. He'd been a mayor of Bordeaux and so on, and he retreated into a tower of his chateau, which had 1,500 books in it. And he basically, for the next 10 years, read and wrote. His first book of essays came out 10 years later. And of course, that was basically what he did, was like Walt Whitman with his Songs of Myself, Leaves of Grass. He would add to that collection of essays. So how did I start writing essays? Basically, in a completely different way from Montaigne. I couldn't really retreat anywhere. In fact, I was in the middle of being in advertising. When I was in advertising, I pretty much thought I was never going to write creatively again.
Let me ask you one question there. When you look back, do you miss advertising? Because I can't find anything that drives me more crazy than advertising.
Well, you have to see, I was a father and a
Yeah.
husband, and I had been a teacher, and teaching had been uh, my only way of really making my day job, and it was basically pulled from under me. So what I
Yeah,
had to do was figure out what can I do to monetize my creativity, my
I
ability to
get it.
use
I
words.
get it. It is a creative endeavor, but I don't even like the advertiser. Like I don't like marketing. My marketing department are the most obnoxious people
Well, they
in our
are. It is
company.
Phil
obnoxious.
resents
It is,
being
man.
Oh,
advertised too.
absolutely,
Yeah.
Well, I
absolutely.
Yeah,
don't know. Your HR lady used to sexually harass you.
that's true. But
You
um,
know, you're absolutely right, but it was good money, and a lot of the people in advertising are incredibly
creative. I get
abrasive,
yeah,
self-important, and they do tend to denigrate, and it's competitive, so they're denigrating everybody else's work at the same time. So you feel like you're in a chariot race in Ben-Hur, where you're kind
right.
of trying to win the race, but everybody's not only trying to win the race themselves, but make sure you lose the race, and
Yeah.
so that's a lot of the way it is. But
I feel like when I read your work, you're very empathic, you're very passionate, you're very artistic and thoughtful. You're like everything that's opposed. I'm surprised you were in advertising. I don't want to go
Yeah,
off
well,
on a
a lot of
tangent. I'm
writers
just
were
well,
in
saying.
no, no. Well, you're
advertising.
right. I
Yeah.
mean, I was, and that's
Way to
probably
make
why
money.
I rubbed
Uh,
a lot of people the wrong way. One of my colleagues called me derisively the professor, so so that, should tell. But also I got into medical advertising, which was a little more intellectual. I mean, at least you had to understand a little science, a little physiology, anatomy, and so on. But you're right, and I ran into all kinds of trouble because there was a part of me that always wanted my idea to be the one that was up there. I wanted to be
mhm.
immortal. And advertising is not a place to go for immortality. It's a place where, like I remember John DeLorean once wrote, the famous auto designer,
Mhm.
making executive said, "When I was a GM, my applause came in the paycheck," and that's the way it is in advertising. I mean, you're lucky to have a job,
Pretty
and you're
dog
not
eat
supposed to.
dog, and yeah.
And
You
don't
get a
forget.
base pay, but you get bonuses.
Well, I'm sorry to take you off on a
No,
Not
no.
tangent.
at
So
I
all.
didn't
anyway,
Yeah.
No, that's
okay.
no,
Let's
you're
what's
setting the
fun about
scene.
talking to us. We go on
You're
tangents.
you're
yeah.
setting, no, that's okay. You're setting the scene because I was in advertising, working long hours, late into the night, waiting for rounds and rounds of the same project where, it started off with 10 words and it ended up with one of my words in it, and that was the word and. And I was waiting for this to go on and on. And so I'm sitting there at my desk late at night. And suddenly I started like having these ideas. And I think, well, why don't I develop them? Why don't I just like take an idea and see how far I can take it and make it, like, look, when you're in the SATs, they give you 20 minutes to write an essay on a topic that they provide. So there was no difference between the SAT student sitting there and writing an essay to prove, his writing ability and me just writing about an idea that just popped into my head. Or I would take some idea or some question somebody asked me and I would extrapolate from that and expand
Mhm.
upon it. And that's how it is. And there is something dialectical to that too. I mean, the best writing is a writing that sort of seems like a dialogue, like it's between two people, it's between the writer and some imaginary self or some tormentor, and it's trying to
Right.
work out something. So that's how I did it. I kind of got into, and that, so in a way, the essay was my portal to getting back into creative writing. And that's how it started. And before I knew it, okay, my first book, I should tell you. So what happened? So what happened was I wrote my first book probably about 5 years after I started going freelance in advertising. When I decided I was going to not just be guy behind a desk. It's called Making Up for Lost Time.
You want to hold
Yeah.
it right in
You
front of
know,
your chest because it
it's two, yeah,
blurs. You
Yeah,
got
two,
the,
it
yeah.
blurs real
2000,
bad.
it was
There it is.
2011. It
Making
was
up for lost
2000.
time.
There
Okay.
you go. It was
Is that an
2000.
essay collection?
Yeah, it's an essay collection in which one of the essays is, as you might expect, making up for lost time. And it's about success, failure, the various incidents in my life, things like such a disparate collection of experiences, like getting a mammogram, as a man getting a mammogram. In fact, the essay is called The Manogram because
Oh,
most people don't think of men as having an incidence of breast cancer, but it can happen.
Percent.
And also A Perfect Day for a Colonoscopy. That was another one of my
I can
essays.
identify with that one.
Yeah, well, because it is something we have to deal with, and of course
That
there's a big
colonoscopy.
propaganda about it.
An
There,
an assay, if you will.
the
And
themes the themes are, some of it is about wildlife in the city, like this
yeah,
mysterious red rooster, a nest of pigeons, a family of pigeons on our windowsill, a little caterpillar in Rockefeller Center trying to make his way across a sidewalk as I was going to an advertising job on Madison Avenue, and things like that, having but they focus on every one of my essay collections focuses on a different theme. That one was making up for lost time, kind of trying to get back into the swing of being a creative writer, but also about success and failure. Some of my avocations, like swimming, have a long essay about how I got into swimming kind of late in life. Um, then I wrote another essay collection called All Over the Place. This one was really basically what you would expect, all over the place. The only way I could organize that was by doing it according to the alphabet. So every essay had its own, started with a different letter of the alphabet, and I did 26 essays. Then I did one called Sartre in the Subway, which brings up philosophical perspectives on living. Again, everyday life, but seeing it in terms of existentialism. We make choices; those choices rule our lives. Therefore, we take responsibility for the choices we make and for the lives that somehow evolve out of those choices. And then before Culture Crazed, the last book of essays I wrote, the fourth one was called Self-Helpless. This one took the theme of we're all, we always buy,
Oh, there's Aaron.
people love self-help books, but the self-help books are always written by, people who are psychoanalysts or people who are very good at who've made
Often
$1 billion
amateur.
or $1 billion, and they're telling everybody else, the schlumps out there, how they can do it too. I always thought that was the wrong way of going about it. It's kind of like ass backwards. What it should be is people who make mistakes should then talk about the mistakes. And then, because that actually is much more in tune with the reader, and how not only you make the mistakes, but identifying the mistakes, how you get out of the mistakes. It seems more authentic. Okay, and now Culture Craze. Let's fast forward to the present. This book is a kind of a very personal book that is almost like an autobiography, as all books are. All books, no matter what they are, even if it's a recipe, it's an autobiography, if you get my drift.
Ew.
But this one is through the prism of the cultural artifacts, the cultural figures, the cultural issues that mean most to me. And hopefully it's not the end of a discussion. It's not like an encyclopedia. It's not meant to be, oh, let's refer to that book because that has the alpha and the omega on any particular subject. No, it's really supposed to start conversations, not finish them. And
yeah.
I think when you're coming down to it, everything that has to do with art and culture is subjective. And,
Hmm.
as we know, with every kind of subjective judgment, each person thinks, oh, my judgment is not only the right judgment for me, but it's the right judgment for everybody. That's what we call the subjective universal. And of course, it's a fallacy to take it any further. Every opinion on culture is an opinion, but some opinions are maybe more interesting than others. Um, but for instance, the themes of this book that run through this book on culture, there are a few major themes. And for instance, um, the of course, the various figures that I find fascinating ranging
Right,
from
right. The Miles
Miles
Davis.
Davis,
Uh,
Bernardo Bertolucci, Hugh
yeah.
Hefner, Mae
Sidney
West, and so on.
Poitier. Yeah.
Um, but
Yeah.
also, um, but also, there's a theme that is really I think I think we all are feeling it now, even though people don't always express it, between the autonomy of culture, the individuality in culture, the skills and the creativity that goes into culture versus versus I don't know, versus AI, versus all of these different mechanisms that have been invented to help make it easier for us to have culture, to create our own culture.
Right.
And also uh, the juxtaposition and the opposition of individuality, of originality and imitation, originality and imitation. To me, I think these are two of the major issues in our society.
Right.
If all you have to
Well,
do is go on, I'm
I
sorry.
wonder, so when did you finish the book? Because did you finish the book before February of 2025?
God,
Because what I feel like when I was reading the book, the overwhelming feeling that I was having was that a lot of the things that you were talking about when for instance, you talk about the uh, double feature of Breakfast at Tiffany's
And
versus
Midnight
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 Cowboy
Cowboy.
Cowboy. Hmm.
in
Yeah.
1960s New York double feature, and you're talking about the way that outsiders come into New York and the way the way they enter the city, the way they're shaped by the city, and the way they exit. But maybe even more so when in a later chapter when you were talking about Casablanca, where I feel like the turmoil that's going on in culture right now is like earth shattering. I mean, it's like an earthquake of cultural shakeup right now, where the
Well,
regime is starting to like take over culture. They're taking over the Kennedy Center. They're trying to rename the Kennedy Center after Melania Trump.
Yeah.
They're trying to venture into territory where they don't belong, where they're not
They don't even
qualified.
go there.
They're not
Right.
qualified to govern particularly, but they're especially not
Mhm.
governed to tell what Miranda. They're in no position to tell the playwright how to write his play. So I guess I just got the sense, some of the allusions you made to the regime was from the first incarnation of it when he was, instructing people to take hydroxychloroquine and like really shattering people's lives who were destroyed by COVID. And so I just wondered what has
was
happened since
copyright date's 2020. So
2020.
Yeah. But
Ah,
that's when the first, yeah, because that's when the original collection was put
mm.
together. But
Gotcha.
but
Okay.
most of my, if you look at almost everything that I've written,
But I
there are
found it relatable. I did, what I'm saying is, what I was getting at is I did find it relatable to what is happening now, but, kind of on the fringes of it.
well, here's the way I see it. The reason when you they were first of all they've been written over a long period of time. In other words, from the initial, as I said, some of the essays that I've written go back probably to when I was in advertising, at least the kernel, the germ of it. And then over time, some essays, I don't bother to do anything with them. It's a little bit like embryos that I store. Some of the embryos are just going to stay in deep freeze, not going to do anything with them. Others I develop. The one that you mentioned, the essay on the third man versus Casablanca versus the third man, that takes two very different approaches. In other words, it's really, yeah, it's about those two films, and it happens to be specifically about how we deal with people approach the crisis of COVID. But it could be about any crisis that we are in. I mean, in Casablanca, there's a crisis. It's not necessarily a direct crisis in the sense that the Nazis don't control Casablanca. They are imposing more of their influence, definitely. But the reality is that Rick goes from being a skeptic and sort of cold-hearted and selfish and solipsistic, if you will, like this doesn't have anything to do with me, to being somebody who's part of the game, who decides he's going to put his own gratification beneath a higher goal. He's going to put himself in the service of a higher goal. Versus Harry Lime, who's in the aftermath of World War II in a hard-bitten Vienna. He is going to take advantage of the situation. He's not going to put. He's an opportunist, and so I was really just posing those two attitudes. You remember during COVID, there were people, you could see them on the street, the people who wore the masks and the people who were just exhaling and didn't give a damn.
Right, right.
You saw that. So you saw
Super
that
spreader
every
events
day.
and Deadwood, that type of thing. Yeah.
Sorry?
The super spreader events that
Yeah,
Oh,
started to break
absolutely.
out.
Sturgis. Yeah.
Exactly. In fact, some of Trump's own supporters, that guy, the chicken, the chicken
Rooster.
magnate who had run for president at a previous time, he died at one of those
Is it
events.
is it Ben Carson?
No, it was no, Ben Carson was actually in this guy's I forget his name is Elmer something like that. Elvin Elmer something that was his
Mhm.
first name. I forget his last name.
Yeah.
Um but he had actually been a presidential candidate in 2016 and then sort of disappeared. But no, you're absolutely right. And what happens now? Well, now it's on a political level. Hey, look, everybody was warned. They had one episode of a 4-year episode of Trump, and they saw everything. He got impeached twice. So everybody, there was no
Yeah,
mystery.
they don't care.
But
Herman
people,
Cain.
but
Herman Cain.
yeah,
Uh,
Kane, right? What was his first name? Start with an H.
Herman.
Herman,
Herman.
Herman Cain.
Herman Cain.
Well, Trump
He died
himself
in one of
almost
those
died,
super spreader
actually.
events, and all those people were his own people,
From
so
COVID.
it was a little bit
Yeah.
like the Children's Crusade, I mean, people,
Yeah.
Shouldn't have taken that hydro.
Well, I
demagogues
get,
don't care who they hurt. They don't care. For them, they're just, as I mentioned there, they're just dots, they're just
yeah.
a bunch of suckers, and it doesn't matter how many of them die.
I
But
guess I wasn't very articulate in what I was trying to say, but I guess I was kind of mixing my point. It's like when I was
okay,
reading and you're
okay.
talking
Will
about,
predate today.
I feel like the crisis that's going on in art and
The PBS is being canceled.
PBS being canceled, which
Um,
you alluded
Yeah,
to some
NPR.
PBS
Corporation for Public Broadcasting. Yeah.
those things those things by itself, aside from all the other shit that's going on, to me that's a crisis.
It is, but the fact of the matter is, it's a crisis that was prompted by people in our democracy. The people in our democracy voted for this person who said he was going to do those things. Now, that's a problem with
mm,
democracy. It's just like
some of it.
it's a problem when you go to a casino. Sometimes you can roll 11, you can roll a 7, and you can roll a 2. But those things are luck. When you have the opportunity, when some people are banging you over the head, time in and time out, this is what can happen. This is what can happen. And you don't listen. You don't
That's
listen.
on you.
You don't care because the price of eggs is too high for you. And because you're not smart enough to understand that the president doesn't control the price of eggs. Well, what can you do?
Did the price of eggs come down, by the way?
And they
Have
haven't come down. No, and we
Not
could all
really.
have predicted that. And you know what?
Why would they?
You could have
They
been
were high. They were high because of the bird flu. Okay,
right.
that's why eggs in particular were high because bird flu created there was bird flu in one of the most major egg producers in the United States.
Exactly. In
And that's
California.
what pushed the price of eggs up. It really didn't have that much to do with the actual economy.
But you know what? I've
But
studied
it was the
technology a
flag
little
they
bit.
waved.
The president, in a sense, is no different from one of these tribal chieftains in an African tribe that was documented in The Golden Bough by James Fraser. To be a chieftain, you would have to run a gauntlet, and everybody had a chance to pummel you nearly to death. But if you didn't die and you got through the gauntlet, you became the chieftain.
Chief.
Wow,
And
that's
once you
devotion to power.
and then once you were chieftain, whoever came in there, it was a little bit like what we see among elks and buffalo and all these other four-legged beasts. The herd master, the guy who had all the females at his disposal, is challenged by an outsider. If he wins, he gets to keep his harem, and if the other buffalo wins, he gets the harem. And I mean, in a sense, we're not that different, you know. And
Well,
we're all
no, I'm not trying to bellyache over the fact that, he did win the election. Okay.
it's sad.
But,
I'm
No, you
not
can
sure I believe
bellyache.
that.
but the circumstances that we have now
No, because
are,
people, but you know what? The reality is, I would love to poll those people and ask them, do you even know what he's doing now? And you know
Right.
what they probably know? Oh, he's making sure that those
he's playing
illegals are being
4D
He's making
chess, right?
America
No
great
bullshit.
again. Yeah.
because we live in a very reality TV
No,
world, you know?
that's what he's doing.
It's a sad thing, you know. And another thing, yes. Oh, culture wars, you know. Oh, let's make sure that trans people don't get on the female soccer team or they don't
Mm.
compete for in the swimming in the Olympics, you know. But people, I'm telling you, these cultural issues are they're so superficial and they are so tangential to the most important issues that people face.
Yeah, it's so
And they
insignificant.
drive people crazy.
These issues are look over there. Okay? They created a narrative, a frightening narrative. You know, the immigrants are eating the cats. Trans people are taking over our sports. Men are dressing up as women to go in the ladies' room to harass women. No, they're not. I'm 58 years old. Not once has a man harassed me in the ladies' room. I haven't even been harassed in the men's room. And my mom took me in the men's room for the first time when I was 6 because the line at the ladies' room was 3 hours and she wasn't gonna make it. So
No.
we went in the men's room.
Yeah.
And she's like, Lisa, cover your eyes. Guys, if you don't want my 6-year-old to see your business, put it away.
I think
I
that's
mean, it's
You
awful.
know?
It's awful rich.
Matt, I've used the men's room.
It's awful rich that
Sometimes accidentally.
the people that would complain about transgender issues and being concerned about girls would also be embroiled in this Epstein bullshit.
Thing. Yeah.
But
I know,
so we're
but look how the Republicans are gerrymandering that issue. Who is being
right.
summoned by the Congress to testify about Jeffrey Epstein? Not Donald Trump, but the Clintons. So, you know, it's like maybe one of the problems here, and look, I've just been reading Howard Zinn's People's History of the United States. So much of it has to do with the fact that the Democrats have too often been unwilling to sort of differentiate themselves from Republicans and to do so in a way that doesn't make them look bad. They're always afraid of like cutting defense spending. They're always afraid of look, during the communist scares when Joseph McCarthy was holding forth in the Senate and and trying to expose communists in the U.S. Army and everywhere else. The Democrats were working with the Republicans to try to bust anybody who was truly a socialist or a communist. They wanted really to cut out the left. And that's why it's so ridiculous when people on the right are always saying, oh, yeah, Joe Biden, communist. Oh, yeah, Kamala Harris, communist. These are not communists.
They're as middle of the
Not
road as you
communists.
could
They're getting,
possibly be.
yeah, it's ridiculous. So anybody who's not right wing, who's not John Birch Society, is a communist according to that formula, and that's unfortunately where we're at. And I'm
Yeah.
sorry about that.
I do sometimes feel like woke culture did go a little too far
I don't.
for some things. And my
And-
sister-in-law is absolutely convinced that the public school that raised her grandchildren actually pushed them to be trans. And I'm like, how? I'm like, what?
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, we're getting
because her granddaughter was trans.
But I mean, we're getting off in the weeds. I
Or
feel
for
like
that
the
matter, that
last thing I'll say,
vaccinations make people, immunizations make people
Right. Mhm. Yeah,
autistic,
and RFK. Oh my God, RFK.
Well,
Oh, and what I love, my favorite thing is what was that? Um,
You
um,
guys are angry tonight.
no, no. But my favorite thing about that is they want to have special places for people who are autistic or have ADHD to go to be taught how to not be autistic and ADHD. I don't know they want to create camps
Is that what happened with
just like
Elon
they did
Musk?
for
Did
for
he do
special
that?
gay,
needs.
well, the
just
thing
like
is, MAGA
Yeah, maybe it should have.
MAGA did not win
Then he
him.
wouldn't be a Nazi.
MAGA did not win him this last election. It was It was everybody who was disenfranchised. It was everybody who
He
was
was.
on the fence. It was the
Mhm.
unaccounted electorate that put him in this time. So I feel like the crisis we're going through, the shit that we're going on, to take the stuff that we're made the stomach right now. Um, that's not what the majority voted for. When you take into account the people that stupidly voted for him and the people that voted against him, against MAGA, I think a clear majority are not getting what they voted for right now.
but you make another good point. All the people who sat on their hands because they thought, like George Wallace said in 1968, there ain't a damn dime's worth of difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. They don't understand. They didn't understand that, yeah, there is a dime's worth of difference. And that dime's worth of difference has to do with women's rights, and it has to do with civil rights, and it has to do
Project
with students.
2025.
Has to do with Medicaid.
It has to do with Medicaid. It has to do with and every other program that could now be on because you know that authoritarian people. It has to do with
Has to do
whether
with
we believe our
distrusting
statistics.
science. Yeah.
Yeah, whether
Mhm.
we believe science, whether we're going to have immunizations, whether immunizations are going to be covered, whether science is going to move forward, whether, it has to do with all of these things. And anybody who just was going, blaming, and here's something that I shouldn't do this. I should really talk about my book, but why
Yeah.
is it that whenever there are hecklers who want to heckle, even about Gaza, and I'm not even going to get into Gaza here because
We
this is not
covered
the issue
Gaza
for
the other
now.
day.
So why do they always attack the Democrats for that? Like, oh, the Democrat. I never hear anybody ever uh, accuse a Republican of supporting genocide or accuse a Republican of
It's
being.
expected of them now.
Yeah, because it's expected, so we don't care because it's
That's a great
expected,
point, Eric.
Yeah.
That to me, that's
It's
that's
the
that's
age of
asymmetrical.
open and animosity. It's the age of being an asshole.
Let's get
Let's get to the lost art of handwriting. How about that?
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, and I
Culture
actually took notes
clays.
on that. One of my one of my favorite things that you said is penmanship patois, because that's what I do.
Penmanship
So
as excuse me.
penmanship patois, where it's
Petrol.
like patois, which is a mixture of languages, and your penmanship is a mixture of cursive and print, and mine is mostly print because I have the left-hander's handwriting. It's atrocious, and half the time the ink's dragged across the page.
Why is it
So,
called left-hander's handwriting? Oh, because you had to have a right-handed desk?
right, among other things. Yeah, they tried to find me a right-handed desk, but I was in school right after they had been training kids not to write left-handed with things
Oh,
like, rulers. And like smack. And I had a teacher who was used to training kids not to be left-handed, but they told her, she was older, and they told her she had to stop that. She couldn't do it anymore. So instead, I would get hit for my posture,
Hmm.
you know, because she could get away with smacking me with a ruler because I was slouching. So I
oh,
had
I see.
really good
Why
posture
could she
for a
get away with
while.
that?
Hmm?
Why
Did
could
you
she
go
get
to a
away with that?
parochial school or
Because
something?
it was a public school, but
And they were
1981.
hitting you in a
Even
no,
all
public
the
school?
more, why could she get away with
that was
that
high
then?
school.
No.
No, I guess maybe I was 5, so because I was in the first grade, I was 5. So that was like 1970, 71, and they still had corporal punishment. You could still be swatted the whole 9 yards.
Mr.
Terrible.
Miowski.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never experienced any corporal punishment in school.
That's
There
good.
was verbal abuse,
My
but
dad
We
was
did.
nunned out of being a lefty.
So the essay is about how sometimes committing, when you take notes, when you write in longhand and cursive, that it's more engaging. It tends to become more embedded. Your memory is trained. It's better. And I think those things are true. When I think about when I was in college, I had a lot of history classes. I loved history. So I'd go to class and I'd be like all tensed up and ready because I almost wrote down every verbatim, everything the professor said in my notebook. Like I committed it all in cursive. When I look at them now, it's ridiculous. The handwriting is like really small and
oh,
everything.
really?
But I probably never had that much of an ability to retain, my memory has never been as good as it was at that time. I did pretty well in my exams, even though I don't think I'm especially smart,
Yeah.
but
I would
I did,
keyword in a sentence.
So
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think that that's something, you type something and blah blah blah, and then you make a typo, you go back and fix it, but then the sentence has lost all structure that it may have had in your head, or you may have double. I do think that the art of handwriting is something that's lost. That kids are not a lot of young people don't know how to write cursive at all anymore.
Mm.
So I think that chapter was very enlightening.
Thank
This,
you.
I
I
don't
want
know if I
to.
could read cursive.
I want to. I think what I wanted just to touch on
Yeah.
what Lisa was talking about with the patois. I think what people patois, like you said, is like a hodgepodge of different languages all kind of thrown together. And on one hand, I want to say that that's kind of what I think of in a larger sense what culture is. We all of us create our own cultural patois. We borrow from this and we borrow from that, and we create our own customized culture based on the things that interest us, a kind of mosaic, if you will. But what you were talking about, that patois, is a little bit of cursive, a little bit of print, and sort of in a way fashioning our own system, if you will. There used to be something called shorthand that people used to learn
Start that.
to be secretaries. They had to learn, and it was like swiggles and all these other things. It was almost like an
Hieroglyphs
idiomatic
almost.
kind of language.
Yeah.
And to some extent, that's what we do. And I know I do that too. I have my handwriting is a mixture of print, but I join letters and I do all kinds of things, a little bit like calligraphy. Um, and I think that what you're saying, Phil, is absolutely right. And there are studies done. I believe there were Norwegian-based studies. And then there were studies in the United States using UCLA students and Princeton students. And they found that on both ends of the spectrum, whether it was children in elementary school or college and graduate school students, they learned better when they wrote things by hand. It could be that just simply the effort of writing by hand, it's almost like it becomes, this is not exactly right here, but a little bit like muscle memory. It's like the doing it by hand is slower. It commits more of yourself, more of your brain. It connects
Several pathways.
the abstraction with something very concrete and very tactile. And when you're learning, when you're trying to memorize or you're trying to understand something, you need all the help you can get, essentially. And all these parts of the brain, the more parts of the brain you can activate to accomplish this one task, the better off you're going to be. And I feel like this is, I'm
I
sorry.
got a question for Aaron real quick. I'm sorry. Aaron, did your boys learn cursive?
No.
Okay. Sorry.
No, that's all
Curious.
right. And what I
They're in
feel
their 20s.
I feel that that's one of the bigger themes of the book, that here's something that we are a handed animal. Forget about the tool maker, because we're not the only tool makers. We're not the only handed animals. Obviously, other animals use their hands to peel, to break things, to do things. but we are a-handed animal, and this is part of what makes us special. This is how we survive. This is how we thrive because we could take things with our hands and invent things with our hands and use our hands in a creative and productive and powerful way. And if they remove handwriting, that's just one more thing. People no longer have to cook. They no longer have to invent things. They don't even have to screw in it's nowadays you don't even have to use a screwdriver to do most things. I mean, some people do, but a lot of people don't, and they're afraid of that. That's not something that they want to do. They want
Yeah.
have something until it doesn't work anymore. They throw it out and they get something else, and it's all nice and new. They don't have to ever reassemble or tinker with. And so, what we're essentially doing is disarming ourselves, not disarming ourselves like we have 29,000 nuclear warheads as opposed to 30,000. No, we're disarming ourselves in that we can't boil an egg. We can't write our names by hand.
Boiled
We
eggs
lose
today.
our signature. We're going to lose everything. And everybody seems just, as everybody seems to be getting on board with it. And
Right.
so this is my
But
way of, you know, sounding the clarion trumpet.
yeah, it's an interesting thought. We're going to inject something right here that we hope will become a mainstay. We're
Mhm.
going to start doing ads for some of our favorite podcasts, and this one
Okay.
is Family Plot by our
Mhm.
friend Dean Bose and his wife and family. That they do a really good podcast. It's about it's all about it's not true crime, but it's all about reality. It's all about
Family life.
true life. Yeah. So take a listen to this ad, and then we'll come back with Eric and wrap it up here in a bit. All
Okay.
right. So I'll add that in later.
Oh, okay. So that's not actually how I'm not going to be able to see this ad. Okay.
No, but
No,
I'll add
sorry.
that in later.
Oh, we're not
You'll have
on.
to
We're
you'll
not
have to
on.
download
Hey,
it.
look,
Yeah.
I'm kind of sorry that we took that
Haven't
little
made the ad
tour
yet.
down Gaza Lane because I get into that's one thing I stopped doing all political. Anytime
Uh,
someone tries to engage me
I'm
politically,
sorry, I kind of hooked you on that. It's my
Yeah.
fault, but
Yeah.
I stay off of it.
the chapter you did on the
The essay.
yeah, that's that got me thinking about it. That got me thinking about what's going on now, and so I don't want to restart it again, but I felt like you were at least somewhat sympathetic to our angst about it, and that we could
Oh,
have
sure.
a
Well,
brief
Interlude.
interlude about it.
I'm not sure. Yeah, no. You
Well,
know.
see, we haven't talked to the book about the book so much, so that people have to get the book.
Aaron,
What do you guys
let,
want to talk
I
about? I'm
I
fine
think
with
we
it.
should
It's
About
just that I
mental.
know that it's just such a
I'd be
there's just
open to watching
it's really one
Breakfast
thing.
at Tiffany's and Midnight Cowboy and coming back and talking about those.
Yeah,
yeah, would you be open to doing that?
That'd
sure.
be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Then
I think that one of the
we can
issues with that
get
is
back on the book then too.
not so much that it's about COVID it's really about it's about a whole decade and how you enter one way and you come out the other and sort of showing, and it's not just about the city.
How
It's about
fast things are changing.
Yeah, it's
Mhm.
about it's about how you see it. You see the
Mhm.
imminence of it
Mhm.
here, and now you see how it turned out over
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so many of the elements are the same, the parties but I wanted to talk, if I could, about the concept of culture as an individual and collective memory. I mean, it's not just about where we are. It's not just a snapshot in time about where we are today, but it's also some way of it's a kind of a touchstone, or it's a kind of a large artifact or collection of artifacts about where we've been in the past. And when you kind of take that away, or when you play with it, or when you suppress it, what happens is people they lose whole tracts of who they were, of where they came from. And I
Yeah.
think that's also interesting. Um, the ocean, obviously we've talked about the idea that culture is something that is that we tailor make for ourselves, that we collect from various sources, and it's all very individual. But also the fact that it is something that is a part of memory. Uh,
Right.
And
I
that goes back to that essay I wrote called "See It While It's Here" about walking around in New York and seeing a cigar shop here that, is like it's almost like a slice of, a slice of the 1960s, that
Mhm.
is still here, a bunch of Cuban guys, all hanging out in a shop and they're
You
rolling
tell
cigars and
Yeah,
that
you
could all
tell
be
a good
gone.
story.
You tell a
It could
story
all
in
be-
there about how you're doing a summer job with your friend or something. He was a country music fan. You
oh,
guys
that's
were going
right.
back and forth trying to decide what was going to play, and you were playing classical music. That reminded me. I went through my own classical music stage, and one of my first jobs, I was working at this women's outlet store, and they would put on Q102, which was like adult contemporary pop
Top
music and
40.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
top
Yeah,
40.
40.
So, and then when they weren't looking, I turned it over to WGUC, which was the University of Cincinnati classical music station. So we had this little like passive aggressive battle that was going on, and
Yeah.
they all hated me. They all hated me for doing that.
Of course,
But
music is a very, again, an inclusive and a very divisive thing. You were mentioning whose taste is it anyway? That's a little anecdote in a somewhat more serious. Seems like a very serious literary essay about Virginia Woolf hating on James Joyce when when most people would put them in the same course in college. They're basically would be one after the other. And who creates taste? But again, taste is one of those things you can't really argue. And I do remember being in that situation, cutting bushes for the minimum wage with this guy who, smoking his Marlboros and telling me, he wanted to get pissed. He wanted to get into a fight with me over whether Johnny Cash was better than Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. I mean, how do you put those two? How do you put those two musics in the same frame? And yet,
yeah,
how do you, and you can't, and yet people are certainly willing to do it, and we see it
Now I
now
want to
in culture
try.
wars. And
I do want to say, as far as culture wars go, let me just slip this in real quick. Um, I feel like social media and the availability of the internet and reels and Facebook is homogenizing our culture. And I'm not sure how I
Um,
feel about that. I'm not real happy about
what do you
that.
mean when you say
Kind of
homogenize?
doing the
Throwing it all
opposite, I
together?
Like,
think.
I grew up this way.
I
My
think it's
family did
dissipating it.
this.
I think it's the death
Yeah,
of the monoculture. We're not
right.
gathered around watching something on a Tuesday night anymore. We're all doing our own thing.
Well, there's that too. I mean,
Yeah.
it started with television, okay? But you had like this town did it this way, this town did it that way. My mother's mother grew up in a holler, literally in a holler, okay? So she was very hillbilly. She knew how to do all the stuff. My mother grew up learning very poor, and she learned how to do stuff. She made our clothes when we were babies, the whole 9 yards. And then, as culture came along, convenience came along, we've learned less and less independence, but I feel like that has, as I said, homogenized the culture. There's less accent in Boston than there used to be. Appalachia isn't as, I guess, what you consider backwards or homespun as it used to be. Um, you know, accents are less, people are hearing so much that's not their accent from their home that the accents are kind of
they're
homogenizing.
coming diluted.
Yeah, they're diluting.
Yeah,
They're
homogenizes.
being
So
Yeah,
uh,
homogenize.
so
Yeah.
it's a hollow though.
no,
It's
it's a holler, HOLLAR, because they would communicate by hollering, and it was a
Mhm.
valley, so it would echo.
It's funny that you're bringing up
It's my family.
in a very modern context, 2025, an issue, a theme of Claude Lévi-Strauss and Tris Tropique when he went into the Amazon and found these what they you would think were tribes that had absolutely no connection, no contact with the civilized world, and yet he commented that that was a myth that there was no part of this world, there was no group
Yeah.
of people or individual who wasn't in some way tainted, contaminated, contacted by the modern world. The paradigm of the bush child who then becomes an airplane pilot, a fighter pilot. There's no, or that the gods must be crazy. That Coke bottle that appears in this village in a West African village, and they
That
all
movie
think
was
it's a
good.
it's a god that it must be from a god.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, and yet I feel like just to the contrary. I think maybe we've become very siloed. We've become very schiz. There are these great schisms among all these different cultures, and everybody is the people in this culture are all talking to each other, and the people in this culture are all talking to each other, and there isn't a whole. I'm not. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah, maybe if somebody who's from, I don't know, from what you consider to be a more Southern or conservative culture gets on TikTok and becomes mesmerized by that, maybe they would be influenced. But I don't see that happening. I think that all of these different social media and all of these different platforms are appealing to different people. And they're not really mixing. They're not really, and even people getting their news. There are places in this country that have, I would say, a news famine. They're getting their
Yeah.
news from one source, whatever that one source happens to be. It's probably Clear Channel or one of these other arch conservative networks. That's what they're getting. And they're simply not getting anything else. So, I don't know. I
Echo
understand what you're
chamber.
saying. You're making a different point that
To be
people
fair, my primary news source is Comedy Central.
are.
Well, that explains a lot. That's some crazy culture right there. But
Just kidding. I'm
but
But
kidding.
anyway, we
Uh,
get back.
I hear whatever he puts on.
but you're thinking, like echo chamber, like people are in echo chambers where they
Yeah,
like to hear what they're saying bounce off the walls right back to them.
again,
Either that
originality.
or their fingers are in their ears. Yeah.
Yeah.
Originality
I've
versus
actually
familiarity.
physically done
You
that.
know? People like what people like now what they liked yesterday. They like yesterday what they liked the day before. And they really want more of the same. And they want to, and we live in a culture that does normatize things. I mean, look, and this is nothing new. I mean, I've been looking, you were talking about this how this particular administration is stomping all over our rights, are stomping all over our institutions. I was just watching again the Vietnam War series about how, and I have the Vietnam papers, the
Mhm.
and how the government lied straight faced to the American public all along
Yeah.
the way about everything to do with the Vietnam.
Oh yeah.
Why were we fighting? Were we winning?
Yeah.
How big were we winning? Yeah, and
Were
meanwhile,
we in Cambodia?
and the reality, yeah, were we? And the reality was what you see in the pictures that whole jungles were completely razed by Agent Orange and by other firebombing, that people were just killed wantonly for no apparent reason,
Right.
that hills were taken and then abandoned at great loss of blood,
Are you
life.
My
talking about
dad was on one of them.
are you talking about the Ken Burns series?
Yeah, but the Pentagon Papers have been around
The
even before
Pentagon
the Ken
Papers?
Burns. I mean, you can read all about how we got into that and how people lied all along the way, simply because they didn't want to step out of line. They didn't want to be the one who was said, "Oh, you see that one over there? He let communist aggression take place. He wasn't fighting for freedom. He was
Right.
and that's it. People are just afraid of being of being ostracized, and this goes back to de Tocqueville. The worst thing you can do to somebody in a democracy is not to kill them; it's to hex them, ostracize them. Nobody will talk to them anymore. He noticed that even in these little towns that had town meetings where everything was done democratically according to raising of hands and aye and nay and all the rest of it, the people who didn't, there was what he called the tyranny of the majority. And that's what we're seeing. And what you say, Phil, is also right. It isn't the majority. It was a committed minority,
Mhm.
while a bunch of people just decided, hey, it's not worth my time. It's not worth my
Right.
time because there's
I
nothing
can't vote for
to
him. I can't vote for her. I'm not going to vote.
And it's just nonsense, isn't it? But that's how sometimes people are simplistic. If they don't like if they don't like one thing, that's it for them. They don't look at the preponderance. They only look at a few things.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's unfortunate. But getting back to so you wanted me to talk a little bit about Midnight Cowboy versus Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Oh,
The
I was saying we should watch the movies and have another episode where
Oh,
we
okay. If you want
go
to
back
do
and
that,
discuss them.
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
Look, we do that. We what is it we call that? Do we have a name for that?
Movie forensics.
Oh, okay. Because we have
Movie-
this thing called TV forensics where the
Rerun
guest
forensics,
picks an rerun forensics where a guest picks an episode of a TV series that is no longer on the air that they loved, and
Yeah.
we all watch the episode and talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we watched these two the two movies that he mentioned in the book, and I'll finish the book.
Yeah.
And we'll have a
Well,
nice
there were
other
more, but
discussion.
these two in particular. Now, I will
Mhm.
say this much: I want you to know, I
Those are two that I'd always wanted to
adored
watch anyway.
To Sir with Love.
I'm starting to wonder if Aaron's in
I thought
witness
it was the
protection
right?
or
I
if
love
he's
that
just
movie
going to be totally associated with the show
Yeah.
because he's got half
Well,
his face concealed.
Yeah,
There you go.
to Sir
If I,
with Love, I think it's
if I
one of the
spread my
best
legs apart a
ever
little bit, it
made.
makes me
I'm just
shorter
kidding,
and
man. I'm just
Well,
And
joking.
it's kind of I watched it when I was young. I was maybe maybe 10 or 11, and it's where I developed my ideals that we shouldn't raise children, we should raise people.
That's
know?
definitely a theme of the movie. I think you were talking about Sidney Poitier, and
Oh yeah, love him.
for me,
Book
and I
Rush.
say in the book, he was for me beyond. Of course, he broke a lot of boundaries from the
Cultural and
start
racial
because
barriers.
he was in the Blackboard
Guess
Jungle.
who's coming for dinner? Blackboard Jungle.
Smart, the
Sir with
smart kid
Love.
who's sort of the one who's going to make the difference for Glenn Ford's
Right.
class. But I really felt like he was a role model in the sense that he was for I don't know why they just had this guy, this one actor, the leading man, take care of himself, do things around the house, not rely, not sort of exploit a woman in his life. It wasn't like he had to be in there with his mama or with his girlfriend or with his wife, and she was always he was his own man. And when you mentioned Sir with Love, he was a single guy there. He took care of himself, and he was trying to teach his charges how to do the same, how to
He had
have
an authentic,
Be adults.
he had an
be an adult.
authenticity about him, that like he didn't have a gimmick. He wasn't Cary Grant where his hair was perfectly parted in one way and he had a certain accent or anything. But he transcended the whole racial issue, and he was actually like an everyman, even though it was in an age when it was very difficult for black artists.
As I
general.
point out in the essay, because he was so different, because he was such an outlier as the only really black leading man at the time. They didn't know what to do with him, so they said, "Okay, just let him be an everyman." You know what I mean? They didn't. With John Wayne, he had to be John Wayne. He had to be bigger than life. He had to talk a certain way. He had to be, dominating and daunting and tough.
Racist.
There was no such shibboleth. There was no such burden on Sidney Poitier, you
Right.
know. But the only guys in those days who were allowed to kind of be what I call a mensch or just a regular human being were Jack Lemmon,
I
but
knew
he
you
was
were going to say
comic,
Jack Lemmon. I knew
comic.
you were going to say him.
Yeah, because he was like he was every guy, He was a guy who worked in
Right.
a big room of other every guys who didn't really have
And
much going for him.
particularly good looking. He wasn't,
Right. No,
particularly successful.
exactly. He wasn't particularly tall. He wasn't particularly strapping. He wasn't going to win any fights.
You ever
And
seen Glengarry?
Six pack.
Glenn Ross? You ever see that?
Yeah.
oh yeah, oh he
I
was so
thought he was
pathetic in that, wasn't he?
outstanding in
It's a
that.
men's movie.
Well,
Well,
it's a
yeah,
stage play first.
yeah,
No,
I
it's
agree
a
with that.
woman who loves that movie.
It's fun. Yeah, I agree. It's unfortunately for that playwright, he doesn't really write too many good female roles, and he's not Tennessee Williams. Let's put it that way, um, or Lanford will, or any other most play. There are other playwrights who
I
write
enjoy
better.
an all-male cast. I
Yeah,
just, this particular, for whatever reason, this particular subject matter, it didn't grab me.
well, so because what it's doing is it's translating sales into that, winning, losing, fighting, killing. It's me or him, mano a mano.
Right,
That Al
right.
Pacino character kind of exemplifies that.
Smell the cigarettes and the bourbon and stuff in that movie.
Yeah, yeah,
Maybe
and
that
sort
was
of
it.
like
I can't stand the smell
you
of cigarettes.
Yeah.
instead of hunting, with a gun, you're hunting with your tongue,
Right, right.
with your yeah, I can understand that. Um,
Always be closing.
And considering Philip's aversion to salesmanship
I
and
don't,
pressure sales,
the
we
acting in that,
once we were at a car dealership. We had been dropped off because our car died. His sister dropped us off and left us there. We didn't know she was going to leave. Okay. And we had no way to leave. And the salesman was annoying Philip so much that I finally said, "That's it. We're out of here." And we literally went and sat on the bus bench. And the salesman came out, got us, said, "Let's try this again,"
oh
brought
no,
us in, and we got a slightly better deal because I was like, you know what? We'll take the bus.
it's funny.
I had a bus pass. I had enough
but
money
look,
for
you're
him.
talking about Al
We tried.
Pacino, Jack Lemmon, Kevin Spacey, and even
You're talking
Harris.
Ed Harris. Yeah, he was good in that
That
as well.
movie had the best, and even Alec Baldwin, who I usually don't care for, was awesome. But his character was kind of one dimensional. But that
Yeah,
movie was,
wasn't he was the louse who comes in with his Rolex and is basically trashing everybody, basically telling
Yeah.
them go out there and be men, and then kind of emasculating them on the way.
right.
Yeah, which
First
is
place is
typical.
you win a set of steak knives. Second place is you're fired.
No. First place was like a car.
Yeah,
Oh, second,
and
Place
that's
was
what.
steak knives. Third place was you're fired.
yeah. And you can't have these leads because giving you these leads is like taking them and flushing them down the toilet. That's what he
Again,
told
typical, yeah, like
poor Jack Lemmon.
setting you up to fail. Like everybody has to become an alchemist, you have to be an alchemist to be able to sell.
We were
Um,
watching a Jack Lemmon movie a couple days ago where Jack Lemmon was a real dick to everybody he talked to. I think it was The Out of Towners.
oh, I didn't see that. Yeah. No, no,
Days of wine and
It was,
roses.
it was
Yeah, he
just
was an asshole
but
in
that was
that.
I hate that movie
just
just
a real entitled guy throwing his weight around, kind of the proto Karen, let me talk to the manager type guy.
oh yeah. Yeah, Days of Wine and Roses, he's like a terrible out. He and Lee
Yeah.
Rempton are such alcoholics. It's almost painful to watch it, when they destroy
Yes.
that house. I'm just like all glass. It just drove me crazy,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff always bothered me when I was a kid, especially. Like who's gonna clean that
Who's
up?
going to clean?
Right.
Who's gonna
I
clean
should
it
mention
up?
that my favorite author,
Who's gonna pay for the replacement,
my
Right.
favorite author was also in advertising for
Was he?
General Electric at one point. Yeah, Kurt Vonnegut.
Oh yeah, Kurt Vonnegut.
And
Yeah.
he's also an essayist.
Yeah, he
Interesting.
wrote he wrote
You
essays.
need to say that my absolute favorite medical advertising line is infected taint. Okay.
Infected taint.
If
I
you
don't think
get an
that's the medical
infection,
term.
I don't think they use the word taint, but if you get an
Perineum?
infection between your scrotum and your anus,
Interesting.
And what do they call
uh,
the area that?
notify your doctor immediately.
Oh, I see.
You
Yeah.
die from it. And
Just
I'm
in
like,
just as a general
infected
rule or due
taint.
to some medicine?
It was a
It's
specific
probably
I hate that
it's a
there's
medication. I can't
medical
specialty.
remember
It's
which one
commercials.
just
it is. But how much
Hearing all the
did
side
you
effects makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, the side effects thing where it says this drug is wonderful, but you might get headaches, diarrhea, infected taint.
Or even death.
Yeah, I'd
I
say
don't
Or
know that
death.
it's one that you just
And
I was in
what is
that
it?
business for a long
Seizures,
time.
heart problems, lung problems. It's like
They have to do it though because it's under it's called fair balance. Like
right.
know
No,
what
I
you're
get
getting
that. It's
into.
just I think that's the best part of the commercial. I'm
Well,
like,
if you,
when they basically effectively said, this could cause this medication, which is for something else completely. It's not even a cream. It's like, it's either a shot or a pill. I don't remember which one, but it can
Ask your
cause,
doctor.
yeah, and then the whole thing where it says, tell your doctor if you have this. I'm like, I'm sorry, if we get to number 5, I'm out on the medication, first of all. Second of all, I'm not taking anything that can cause an infected taint.
I didn't even know that was called a taint. That's a very interesting
Mm.
euphemism. Doesn't
It's
mean
Yeah.
anything to me.
Aaron, before we
it's
go, why don't you
slang.
do you have any like 50,000 foot view of the book that you wanted to say?
Um, I only got through about 30-40% of it. That's because I didn't know today was the day. I
Well,
thought I
Yeah,
had more time.
so
that is on us. Terribly sorry.
It's
that's
it's on
okay.
me too. I should check my
Yeah.
calendar more
It
closely.
probably happened because we rescheduled. We had to reschedule once, and here's Eric's other book.
That we have and discussed.
Very fine book there,
Rocked and rolled.
rocked and rolled.
Um,
Maybe I'll send this to you, Aaron, since you have not read it yet.
Yeah.
but
I owe you
getting
another
back
one
to,
too.
you talk about things that are gone that'll never be back. One of those is the circus. I mean, we talk,
Mhm.
people, everybody knows what a circus is. I mean, but how many
Yeah.
people can go to a circus or have ever met? And now, in fact, it's got such a taint. Talk about a taint. Now there's a
Mhm.
taint on the circus. There are
Mhm.
40, I can believe there are 40 states where there are specific laws against captive animals that, you can't like parade elephants around and do all these other things. So, and so
They
I
still
wrote an
allow
essay
that
about.
here, but it's very, very controlled. Sorry, go ahead.
No, but so sometimes it's a question of, well, things are gone and other things have taken their place, but are we really, is it such a bad thing that they're gone, or why were they there in the first place? And I bring up in this essay about the circus, the very figure of P.T. Barnum, who was your prototypical,
Barney,
yeah,
Ringmaster.
he was a carny, he was a showman, uh, a
Huckster.
ringmaster, and and to some extent he did good in that he kind of opened people's minds up to all the difference that's out there, all the strangeness, and he
And he
made.
employed a lot of people who wouldn't have had,
Exactly. Marginal people who wouldn't have, but at the same time, while he opened people's minds to their imaginations to the wildness out there, he didn't really make them accept it or accept that in themselves. It was always out there other, the way people would go to asylums and pay a penny to walk through asylums on a Sunday in London so they could see all the freaky people, doing having spasms and shouting and being basically what we call generically crazy. So,
hmm,
it's so
interesting.
he was
Don't
exploiting
give
it
that Trump
without
that idea.
necessarily enlightening us about it. And that's we see that throughout, we see that throughout civilization. But before you can get to the point of being sensitized and accepting the other, you have to at least be able to acknowledge the other. And so to that extent, P.T. Barnum opened the door, he opened
right?
the door to that.
He
Uh,
opened the door and he showed you the egress.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. And hopefully the place didn't burn down before you got to the egress. Because there were a few incidents where his museums burned down.
Mm.
As we
You don't
wind,
think that was an insurance thing, do you?
No, no. In those days, there was no insurance, not of that
Mm,
kind. No.
no.
as we wind down, is like on your first visit, you did a couple reads. Did you have any reads that you uh, prepared for this
Um,
episode or not? Or am I catching you off guard? I'm putting you on the spot again
well,
here. This is second time, third time. I
you
put you on.
know, since I did mention,
Maybe we'll go out with a passage from Culture Crazed.
yeah, this is something that let me read two different things.
Okay.
This is about these are toward the end. This is from a chapter. Now you got me doing it. This is from an essay called "Homage to Nice," and here's the book. And this is about actually this is about terrorism because Bastille Day on Bastille Day 2016. Nice was unfortunately a scene of terrible carnage. Some crazy zealots drove a truck along the promenade right near the Mediterranean while there was a Bastille Day celebration. Lots of people were out there looking at fireworks, and obviously there were, I think, 83 dead, and hundreds of people were harmed.
Okay.
So this is about that. On Bastille Day 2016 in Nice, a terrorist drove a truck through a crowd of revelers as they enjoyed the fireworks, killing 86, including 15 children, and wounding hundreds. Several times on my way to the beach, I crossed the Boulevard des Anglais, where the terrorist act took place. Nice always had the aura of a place where only good things happened. It seemed impervious to sorrow. No longer. When demented zealots make political statements, they often embellish their rhetoric by shedding the blood of innocents and defiling civilized spaces. Assassins who demolish vintage buildings that cannot be rebuilt and mangle carefree civilians while they indulge in modest pleasures stalk my vivid memories like spectral assassins, intent on wrecking the present and erasing the past. I hope the nightmares they induce will not outlive the charm and beauty of the places they try incessantly to desecrate, yet fail to destroy, and that Nice never loses the thrilling and enduring effect it had on me. So that's one thing. And then there's one other thing. We talked about AI. And since, there is so much, talk about AI now. I want to here's just one little recipe that I have here. And this is from the essay that says The Power of Human Defect. Human creativity can be protected from artificial intelligence by low-tech, old-school qualities, human originality, and inconsistency. The Navajo weavers intuitively understood this idea. They would leave small flaws along the borders of their rugs in lines called kanahinotis, and excuse my Navajo mispronunciation, or spirit lines. They're called spirit lines.
Okay.
These deliberate mistakes were meant to liberate an artist's spirit from their cloth, but it also marked the uniqueness of their work, like a fingerprint or signature. These craftspeople understood that the value of human creativity lies not in its regularity or perfection, but in its eccentricity and defect, precisely because these are unpredictable, individual, and typically human qualities. Products of human creativity must embody such reviled attributes to protect art as an evolving human activity. The alternative, uniform, smoothly competent works of flawless, routinized, quality-controlled professionalism can and will be easily replicated and appropriated by AI. The Korean artist Chasip Kim used to quip that most fine art, even at the highest levels, was like Purdue chicken. Rather than produce fresh, unconventional work that challenged or changed perceptions, even the most esteemed artists wished to give the art world what was familiar, popular, well executed, and of certifiable quality in order to generate predictable satisfaction among critics, collectors, and the art viewing public. This formula has worked brilliantly for a small cadre of successful gallery-represented artists. Yet henceforth, creative individuals who strive foremost to cultivate an audience by pandering to prevailing tastes and to convert their art into a brand and product line for the approval of marketers, critics, and consumers are at highest risk of AI assimilation, since their work is reductive, repetitive, and can be more easily reproduced. And that's basically, and so those are some just some a smattering. I could really, the one thing I'm proud of in this collection is that I could literally flip onto any page, and it's not like a novel. It's not like there's a crescendo, a climax, or anything like that.
Right.
A
A
plot
Easter
point.
spicy
egg on page 12 that
or a
comes back.
spicy passage. Just about any place in this book I could flip to would have some observation, some insight that I believe, will open some discussion for people on the very complex and very essential topic of culture, because culture is something we live with. Culture is like the air we breathe. We can get away from everything, but we can't get away from culture. It becomes part of us.
Yeah.
And
Well said, Eric. I got to say, you bring a lot of thoughtfulness and class to our podcast, and we appreciate having you on. So I'm sorry, maybe we took it off on a tangent.
nah, it's all right. It's your
But
show.
if you want,
Your show.
I can modify that in post production.
You know what?
Guests to be involved.
Phil, I have such faith in you guys. I have such faith in you. Your editorial abilities, your conversational abilities, skills, and also in your editorial abilities. That I'll go anywhere with you in these conversations. I mean, that's part of what makes them, in my opinion, so authentic and so much fun to do, because you just sort of like you go with the flow. You're improvisational, and that is something also that AI can't do. It can't provide, which is
Although
something I bring up when
it does
talking.
produce flaws. You get this. You get the 6 fingers and the weird.
Exactly.
All right, do you have anything you want to promote before any websites? Of course, we got your books, Culture Crazed, Rock and Roll,
Yeah, thank you for the book.
Eric
Thanks a lot. No,
J.
it's my pleasure.
Sonnenschein.
Anybody can visit me on ericsonnenschein.com if they wish to do so. They can see all kinds of, they can actually see poems, lyrics that I've written. They can see reviews to the books that I've done. They can get the links. They can go on my Amazon page. Just Google Eric Sonnenschein or Eric J. Sonnenschein on Google, and you'll go right there. One of the anecdotes I do tell a lot is that, there was a time when I was in advertising. I was sitting in my office on 42nd Street. And right in the center of the advertising world. I couldn't have really done much better to make it as an advertising. And yet I Googled myself just because nothing else was going on. And there was no Eric Sonnenschein there. It's like I didn't exist. And the cyber world, I was a non-entity. I didn't exist on the internet, and I never had. And I said, Eric, that was my Damascene moment. That was my St. Paul going, Saul going blind on the way to Damascus or from Damascus. I think he was going
I
to.
know.
And I went, my God, you've got to change your life, dude, because if you don't change your life, you're never going to be the Eric Sonnenschein you wanted to be when you were 12, 13, 14 years old, and you devoted your life. You became an apprentice to writing. And so
Right.
And so now
Now they
you
got
really,
services that'll clean that stuff up for you if you're
yeah,
on
you
there too
now
much.
you can just Eric Sonnenschein and it'll take you to Amazon. It's so easy, and I really feel like I did change my life, and I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to my wife for
And
supporting that, and I'm grateful,
we should
to you
we should
guys
maybe
for
spell
helping support
Sonnenschein
it.
too. Sonnenschein.
Right.
Correctamundo. That's exactly right. Thank you.
All right. All right, Eric. Well,
Even better than me.
we're gonna call it a night.
Okay.
Yeah,
See you again soon.
it's nice to meet you.
Maybe for those movies,
Nice.
we'll see.
Nice to you. Thank you very much,
All
guys.
right.
Let's
Pleasure
schedule those
speaking again.
movies. That'd
All
be
right.
cool.
Yeah, well,
All right, guys.
let's
Have a good night.
we'll all sing Moon River together. It'll be great.
That's right.
Or everybody's talking at me. That's another good one.
Things no.
I love that song. I love
I
that
love
song.
it. I
That
like
is
you
a
can't think
great
of two
song.
more different songs, but they're both great, aren't they?
Right, right. Maybe we go.